Hello everyone and welcome back. Why is my energy? Energy. I need energy. Hello everyone and welcome back to the Ride Home Podcast. My name is Abby.
Hey guys, it's Caitlin.
I like whenever I say hello to everyone, I say hello to you while I'm saying hello.
Yeah,
like,
I am everyone.
You are everyone. I'm like, hello, Caitlin.
The face
welcome
of
back.
the people.
We are doing pretty good on our comeback now, 2 weeks in a row.
2 weeks in a row. Don't get too excited.
Don't get too excited because next week nothing's happening.
There's nothing next week. We can already promise you there will not be an episode next week. So
there will not be an
episode.
There will not be another episode next week, but I'm proud of us for, cranking out a second episode. Just
doing our thing.
This week we checked out a horror movie, of course, and it came out a couple of weeks ago. I think you said March 20th or something.
22nd,
around there. So if you are a big horror fan, maybe you've seen it already, or if you're just like a Sydney Sweeney fan, which there are a lot, particularly male viewers who may have checked it out already. But the movie we saw this week was Immaculate, starring, like I said, Sydney Sweeney. And it's just kind of a religious Catholic, nun, demonic, Italy horror film. It's just kind of, it's not genre.
I feel like you just described the movie using the same format that Spotify uses to describe your day list. You just tossed out words. You're like scary, horror, Catholic, nun, demons.
It's Sydney Sweeney's day list. You're not wrong.
Jesus, I love that.
So that's the genre that we're working with.
That is the genre.
Can you give us a quick little synopsis?
I sure can. A young American woman is sent to Rome to begin a life of service to the church, but encounters a darkness that causes her to question her faith and uncovers a terrifying conspiracy that hopes to bring about the birth of evil incarnate. Sorry, my bad. That is actually the plot for The First Omen.
Oh. So
how I got confused though. We'll get there. Okay.
We'll get there.
There's a reason. Now I'm going to read the synopsis of the plot for Immaculate. An American nun embarks on a new journey when she joins a remote convent in the Italian countryside. However, her warm welcome quickly turns into a living nightmare when she discovers her new home harbors a sinister secret and unspeakable horrors.
Literally
Spot the difference. Spot the Difference highlights version, if you remember from Highlights magazine.
Yes. Oh my God, highlights.
Spot the difference of these plots.
I can still smell a
The
highlights
paper?
mat. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like kind of like craft paper almost. The highlights popped off. Also the
Highlights
zoo
went
books.
hard.
Did you get zoo books?
I never got them, but wow.
But yeah. Basically the same plots.
Almost identical plots.
On
paper.
And spoiler alert, also the same plot as one of our favorite movies from last year. And by favorite, we mean very ironically our favorite. Like, it's not a good movie. It was just ridiculous. The Devil Conspiracy.
Yes. I want to make a Venn diagram of all three of these movies.
We're just going to put it out there that in order to fully talk about this movie and give an accurate review, we gotta go with spoilers. It's just not, I don't think that there's a world that we can really talk about this movie without spoilers because shit hits the fan right away and it doesn't slow down or stop. So it's just like, we couldn't even give like an accurate review besides just saying whether or not we liked it. So from here on out, there will be spoilers.
Okay.
If you haven't seen the movie yet, go see it and come back to us. Or if you don't care about spoilers or you don't plan on seeing this movie, stick around because we have a lot to talk about.
There's a lot. There's a lot to unpack.
There's a lot to unpack here. I, like always, have no idea really what Caitlin is thinking, but I do know that based on the face she was making when we left the theater, that we are in for a doozy. A doozy of a review from you. So, Caitlin, what are your thoughts and feelings on Immaculate?
I can't remember a time that I have had this many thoughts and feelings about a movie this shitty.
Okay.
I'm going to start with that.
All right. Give us all the thoughts and feelings.
I felt like it was basically an excuse to put Sydney Sweeney in a nun costume. And then like call it a scary movie.
Yeah.
In quotes.
Well, I'm just going to zoop right into your review real quick and just say that the director of this movie, his name is Michael Mohan, I believe. If you go through his IMDb, like he's basically only worked with Sydney Sweeney.
Yeah.
And it's giving like
he's obsessed
Predator,
with her.
yeah.
It's giving predatory, and like it makes me uncomfortable.
I'm a little worried about Sydney Sweeney.
I'm also worried about Sydney Sweeney. If I may.
Yes.
Have a soapbox for a moment.
Here's your box.
Okay. Get me a box.
Okay. Here's your box. You're so tall.
The industry is taking advantage of Sydney Sweeney.
Yeah.
And I can't tell if she's letting them or if she doesn't care, if she's enjoying it. I'm getting uncomfy about it.
Yeah.
Because it feels like she is just sort of the Marilyn Monroe of our generation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like she's basically an object at this point.
Yeah.
And it is starting to feel very uncomfy for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think part of why it is particularly triggering and like starting to make me feel more and more uncomfortable is because I am a woman with a larger chest myself, and experience those types of things on like obviously a much smaller scale because I'm not in Hollywood and like
you don't have a camera
put on posters and on screens all of the time. So obviously my experience with that is a much smaller scale, but it just feels like everyone is just here to see Sydney's boobs. It just feels like she is an object at this point. And this movie made me feel really uncomfortable knowing what I know about this director. Like,
yeah,
I don't know what else she's been in. Like, I haven't seen his other movies.
I'll just watch like he's gay. Like,
yeah, who knows? I mean, I guess that's possible, but it just felt her being a nun. You do see her boobs several times, not like full frontal or anything. You do see them.
I agree with what you're saying, is that this movie in multiple ways felt like a giant fetish.
Yeah.
It was like a pregnancy fetish. It was like a Sydney Sweeney fetish, a nun fetish. It did feel very icky and fetishy, and I can completely agree with you on that.
And also, I don't know if you picked up on this at all, but I felt like the noises that she made were like kind of like
sexual,
like how they used to do in like the 60s and 70s horror movies, where like the women sound like they're moaning, even though like they're screaming in fear, quote unquote, but they're really like they're literally just moaning.
Right.
That was like most of the movie, and it's starting to make me feel like really awkward and uncomfortable. And like she's a grown woman, like she's not like a teenager, so like she's kind of like going along with it. When she was on SNL, like most of the jokes involved her being in costumes where her boobs were showing, and the jokes were about
her. SNL episode was really disappointing. I would agree with you on
like
that.
The writing was really shitty. It wasn't funny, and it was mostly at the expense of her body. And like even just from like the start of her career, it seemed like even just in Euphoria, where she like became a star, it was like the first scene that you're introduced to her character, it's not even her. It's literally like a series really fast of like her nudes that got leaked. And so the first time in Euphoria that you see Sydney Sweeney, it's just fake nudes, and it's her. And so I completely agree, but I also don't know, like I can't knock down her if she actually is just like, you know what, like I just want to make movies and I got, you know, these boobs that I'm going to show off, and like maybe that's her thing, and like, you know, more power to her. But I'm just hoping that she isn't being tricked by especially these like male producers and directors into thinking like, you know, this is like an avant-garde horror movie and we're really going to like break some boundaries and show nuns being more than just nuns, and like whatever bullshit they could have fed her possibly. But also I don't want to like,
downplay the potential of her intelligence and understanding that maybe this was just a cash grab and she just wants to make some money and you know, cut me the check and run. I mean, wasn't she in Madam Web? She doesn't really care what she's in.
Expectations are low at this point.
Which is kind of interesting because she was in Reality from last year, which we both thought was a really good movie, and she gave a really good performance.
I thought so.
And it's odd because even just like her acting in this movie was just horrific. It was
really bad, and I almost feel like her diction was
it was
also
weird.
Directed like that. Like she talked how she talks in Euphoria, which is a little Valley Girl-ish.
Which is weird because they said her character was from Michigan, but she was talking like she was from California. Like she was like, "Yes, Father.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for welcoming me. I've had too much wine."
Yeah, the whole thing felt so weird to me.
Yeah.
We know that she can act. I think she's really good in Euphoria, and I think she's really good in Reality. She was really good in Reality, and she has the potential to be a really good actress, but I think there were just such clear directorial choices in this movie that I was just like, this guy has a lot of fetishes. I feel
stinks. Yeah. Obviously, growing up Catholic, the concept of a nun fetish is weird in the first place because
very weird.
We knew nuns growing up, and they were like curmudgeon-y, not cute. They were old, like, and so that idea of this like hot, sexy nun is just kind of hilarious in the first place.
No, there's nothing relatable to that at all.
No. Did I ever tell you about my nun phase? When I was like 8,
please elaborate.
When I was like 8, I really thought I was going to be a nun.
Okay.
Because my mom kept bringing me to this convent where it was just like these nuns that would just like bro out and play basketball and like they had a garden and they had just basically a sorority house and they were all these like young nuns that...
Was your mom trying to trick you into becoming a nun?
I think she was.
Okay.
I think she was.
Like you just listed like all of your interests.
Right.
Being outside, playing basketball, like hanging out with people.
Exactly.
So your mom was like, cool, let's show her this and then she'll be a nun. Okay.
And now, like in retrospect, thinking back on it, I'm like, wow, all of these girls were just gay. Like I was like, they were all so gay.
100%.
Because they were bawling out together.
Yeah.
And so that in and of itself, I know there are obviously probably some straight nuns. I'm not denying that. I'm sure there are. But much like the priesthood, most nuns we can probably assume are gay and just struggled with that and decided this is the easiest way to like, you know, whatever.
Path of least resistance.
And so to have this like hot and sexy nun fetish, it's like, what?
So out of touch.
What are you talking about?
It's so off base. Like, it's just like, no, get out of here with that.
I don't get it. As the movie started and she like first got to the convent, I was like, okay, maybe they aren't going to sexualize her. Because it kind of seemed like...
It felt like, no. It felt like that wasn't going to happen.
Yeah. And then they showed this like bathhouse where... For some reason, all of the nuns were bathing in slips or like nightgowns.
Like nightgowns, yeah.
And all their showers were open. They had a bathtub that was open. And I was just thinking to myself, this is set in like today's time period.
Yeah, it wasn't.
This isn't the 1800s.
Outdated. No.
Which also Sydney Sweeney was randomly carrying candles throughout the movie.
Candles and also a suitcase that looked like it was from like the 70s.
Like the Sound of Music suitcase that she sings with at the beginning. I was like,
okay, what is going on?
It was a lot of like production design choices that were very weird. And I think they were trying to make the convent quote unquote creepy. But like an old convent in Rome or like the countryside of Italy is going to be creepy in the first place. Yeah. Like all you need to do is show some statues at night and you're good to go.
Yeah. Scene is set.
Yeah. You're good.
Speaking of convents and production design, I feel like very little research or thought was put into Catholicism when it comes to this movie. It was a very weird representation of it.
It felt like a very, again, old or like traditional style, but having it set in today's time period and having like cell phones and a normal reality, it just felt abnormal. And the whole convent itself was this like massive complex filled to the brim with all of these nuns.
Yeah.
And I guess like I guess the background is that like this is where they send the nuns to go and die, basically.
Yes.
But also there were like hundreds of other nuns.
So many young nuns also.
That were there. I'm sure there are like nun hospices and like priest
Sure.
hospices where other nuns take care of them. I don't deny that those probably exist. But it was like this mega complex.
Mm-hmm.
And their whole background was that she was coming to this convent
Mm-hmm.
and she took her vows the first night, which is weird because usually like there's a process to that.
She went to the convent already wearing a habit.
But then took her vows.
Then took her vows. And I was like, wait, I thought they got their habit after they took their vows. It was just all over the place.
It was all over the place. So I agree that the religious aspect was not very believable, but nothing about this movie was believable.
No.
The number one complaint that I have was that Sydney Sweeney's character, spoiler alert, is impregnated with, just like the devil conspiracy, they're
The
trying
DNA.
to clone Christ. They found blood and DNA from the nail that pierced Christ on the cross.
Bro.
And they're trying to clone Christ and they haven't succeeded. And they keep trying to find these young, fertile, beautiful women to
So
impregnate with
weird.
this baby Christ.
This baby Christ.
This baby Christ. Because
Baby
Christ, do 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 do, baby Christ, do 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 do,
baby Christ. Do, 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 baby Christ.
Mommy Sydney Sweeney. Anyway, if you haven't listened to our Devil Conspiracy podcast yet, go take a peep at that. It was a horror movie that came out last year. That was the same exact plot, by the way.
Identical plot.
Basically, it was the same thing where it was like they figured out a way to clone Christ and make this like demon.
Another Jesus.
Yeah, this another Jesus. But of course, when you
It
do
becomes a
that, it
demon.
becomes a demon because blah, blah, blah.
Because reasons.
Because reasons.
Anytime you try to procreate Jesus's DNA with a human, it makes a demon.
It makes a demon. It's simple math.
Now there are 3 movies about it, so you know it's true.
I'm really curious now to see The First Omen, just to see if there is a lab
We got it.
where they clone Christ and it blows up at the end.
We got
Except here's the thing, is that the Devil Conspiracy at least recognized what it was as
100%.
being this over-the-top, ridiculous. I mean, it had like 80s soundtracks and action movies and a
Yes.
priest in a leather trench coat
Yes.
with guns. And I was just like,
Yes.
listen, like this is like
Not taking itself
not-
seriously.
right. And it was incredible. And I laughed through the whole thing. And I think it is so fun and funny. And having that wild, convoluted plot is great. But when you're trying to do this whole like dark, mysterious Sydney Sweeney, and it just didn't work. So all that being said, my main complaint with this was that it was so unaware and it was trying so hard to be this like actual scary movie and to have this kind of plot twist that we were all supposed to be like, gasp, oh my God,
She's pregnant.
she's pregnant. When the first thing that happens after she takes her vows, she goes into this like dungeon chapel where there's like a consecrated host kind of set up. But in the center, instead of that, it's this nail,
the stake.
which is what
Yeah.
they said Jesus was nailed to the cross with.
Sure.
And she passes out. I'm assuming she was roofied by her because she was drinking wine with the priest.
Had to be.
And then cut to a couple of weeks later, she throws up and oh my God, what's going on? They're like, oh, did you have sexual congress with a man before you arrived and all this stuff. And so like as the audience, we're supposed to be like, oh my God, she's pregnant. Whoa, that's crazy. Sydney Sweeney's character was so incredibly stupid. And when she first realized or was being told that she was pregnant, her immediate thought wasn't, oh fuck, this priest roofied me and raped me the first night I was here. She just like went along with it in like complete silence. And they were like, oh, you are like, it's miraculous. She was a virgin.
Yeah, it's a miracle.
It's a miracle. And then they dress her up like Mary and pray
That
at
was
her.
a weird.
It got very like
Out of
A24,
hand. Yeah.
but in like a bad way.
Yeah.
So basically that is my main complaint. And that was a very long-winded way of saying that my main complaint was that Sydney Sweeney's character was so incredibly stupid. And then it took her until the very end to realize like, oh fuck, like some shady shit is happening. I got to get out of here. Meanwhile, if you are a virgin and you wake up pregnant 3 weeks after you passed out after drinking wine with a priest,
this doesn't take fucking like calculus to figure this out.
which like plot twist, the only plot twist is that it's not actually the priest, it was the DNA of Jesus.
Which kind of was a plot hole to me because the priest was being weird.
He was.
The entire time. And I feel like the plot would have made more sense if the priest raped her.
Yeah.
Than like them doing this whole weird thing. Because the priest was being real creepy.
Yeah.
And was like looking at her with like goo goo gaga eyes the whole time. And it's like now I guess they're saying it's because like she's the one they're gonna like do the test on. The read on that for me was like he likes her. Mm-hmm. My biggest complaint about this movie is that it wasn't scary.
Yeah, it wasn't. There were a couple of good jumps,
I
will say.
There were. And like there were definitely moments where I plugged my ears because for those of you who don't know this about me, I have ADHD and I plug my ears in anticipation of like a scare. So there were a couple of times that I like plugged my ears and there was a scare, but it was just...
And I think
overall not super scary.
Yeah, and I think another reason why this movie failed miserably was the scares were initially setting up this convent as being this cult almost.
Yes.
With supernatural instances as well.
Yeah.
The start of the movie, which was like buried alive, kidnapped, cult, which I was actually kind of excited by.
I was like, ooh, this place looks fucked up,
because it was a nun trying to escape and then she gets buried alive, and I was like, oh fuck, like this might pop off.
These people are fucked.
And then it just went from okay to worse to worse to worse to worse.
Yeah.
And I agree, it was not scary.
It just wasn't. I mean, there were like fucked up things, there were like torture things. But to me, that's not really like scary. I don't know. I feel like they should have just stuck with the one thing. Like it's a cult.
Yeah.
And like they do weird stuff. I don't know. And like
it genuinely would have been scarier if she was raped by the priest at the beginning.
Yeah.
Impregnated and like convinced that she was this virgin that was giving birth to this, like, whatever. You could have gone a lot of different routes with this that would have been more fucked up and more scary. And instead they just went with the plot that went off the rails almost from the...
immediately.
Yeah. Like, after the intro scene, every other scene after that, it was just like a train. It was the Anastasia train when the bridge breaks and just flies right off the bridge. That was this movie.
The Polar Express train, like flopping around on the ice.
If only we had a flock of elk to stop this train. And I will say, from just a technical perspective too, it was just like nothing to write home about. Like it was just a very bland, basic. I mean, they certainly found a cool location to film in. But that's about it.
And then the writing sucked.
The writing was terrible.
The writing was really bad.
There was this one line that reminded me of The Taking of Deborah Logan when the character goes, she puked fucking earthworms.
Yes.
There was a line where Sydney Sweeney legitimately said, I just puked out one of my teeth.
Which, why did she throw up one of her teeth?
They did a bad job explaining that, but I think it was that, like, because this baby wasn't Jesus and it was actually a demon fucked up creature, it was like backfiring on her body, and that's why her teeth were falling out and her nail came off. But they did a really bad job explaining that.
Yeah, they did.
They did a bad job explaining most things. To be honest with you, even just like the process of Jesus's DNA made more sense in the Devil Conspiracy.
No, literally though. It
like
really did.
Most of this stuff made more sense in the Devil Conspiracy. I do, anytime I see a movie, I try to at least be like, okay, I'm here. Let me enjoy it. Let me find like at least one positive in this movie. Yeah. And I think my one positive was actually the other nun that Sydney Sweeney like is first like brought on board with, basically. And her story just felt more real and believable, where she was just like, you know, I've had a really rough life and this place was a promise of a roof over my head, food, a job, and a place where I won't be like sexually abused by men, which is obviously the flip side of that, is that they're doing like impregnation testing, or basically in vitro
experiments.
Baby Jesus experiments. I don't know, in vitro with these weird clone babies. Which, speaking of, I am really, really glad that they didn't show the baby at the end.
Me too.
When she gave birth, because they could have gone the route of making an absolutely horrific either doll or CGI baby that's deformed and it can't breathe. And I don't even know if it really was saying that it was a demon. It was almost saying that all of these clones are basically failed clones. So like when they were trying to clone the sheep and they kept back, was it Dolly the sheep?
Yeah.
They had some failures where it would come out fucked up. And I think that's what they were more leaning towards. But also demonic, I don't know.
But because they didn't show it, I had an image in my head of what I was picturing it to look like. And I just pictured a baby with Darth Maul's face. Like the head of Darth Maul on a baby. Yeah. That's what I was picturing. Yeah.
I don't even know what I was picturing. It was like wheezing and I was just like, are they going to show it? And then they didn't. And I'm very glad that they didn't.
Yeah.
But my main question from that final scene is, are Sydney Sweeney's vocal cords okay?
I don't think they are.
Do they need surgery?
She probably had to go on vocal rest for like a long time after that.
I will say, like, even just in that scene, she served. Like, she was really, like, she put a lot of effort into the scene where she's giving birth to this baby, and just after she escaped and she's cut open and all of this stuff. I mean, she screamed her lungs out. It was I thought that final scene of her outside of the catacombs was actually a pretty good scene. I thought it ended on a really good note.
I thought so too.
It was just like the opening scene was great, and the ending scene was great, and the middle was just garbage.
Yeah.
So I think we can safely say small popcorn.
Small popcorn.
Don't really suggest going to see this.
Actually don't.
But we do hope for more in Sydney Sweeney's future, and hopefully she can get more roles where she can actually show her acting chops. I kind of feel like she reminds me a little bit, and it's not like that they are similar people at all, but she reminds me a little bit of Jennifer Lawrence, where if you are not directing Jennifer Lawrence properly, she can slip her dialogue into just being Jennifer Lawrence.
Okay.
And there are some movies, and there are some lines even in like Hunger Games where you hear Katniss through half of the movie, and then all of a sudden there's this one line where you're just like, that's not Katniss, that's Jennifer Lawrence. And I love Jennifer Lawrence, and I think she's a great actress, but I think they are both the type where it does take a little bit more work to get them to be out of their own person and to take a new character.
I think that's fair.
And I think she did a great job in reality taking that new character, and she kind of studied who that real girl talks like, how she acted, how she, you know. And in this, when she's just making up this character with this director who clearly doesn't know how to direct her, it just spiraled into watching Sydney Sweeney cosplay as a nun for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Also, if you have a nun fetish, you're weird as fuck, boy.
Yeah. You got to take that somewhere else.
Get out of here. Get that guy out of here. Thanks for joining us for yet another week. I'm so sorry that this movie isn't something that we can suggest that you go see. Our next episode, I actually will know what our next episode is going to be. Civil War.
Oh, shit.
The A24 movie that a lot of people are buzzing about from the festival circuit. We are very excited to go see that.
Super pumped.
So follow us along on Instagram if you want updates on when that episode is going to be. And until next time, we hope you can see some movies that are a little bit better, hopefully a lot of bit better than Immaculate. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us on the ride home.